I want to discuss Season of the Witch. Season of the Witch is not particularly a bad film, but it's also not particularly a good film. Like most slasher movies, this movie does have issues because most slasher movies don't really have a plot, but this isn't technically a slasher movie. This is an anthology film. Much like Tales of Halloween or Trick or Treat. But what's interesting about this is how much hate this movie actually gets. It gets more hate for the fact that Michael Myers is not actually in the movie. But when you look at the movie and you forget that it's part of the Halloween franchise, you look at it as a anthology film by itself, like Tales of Halloween or Trick or Treat, it's actually a pretty decent Halloween film. The main character is a doctor who I forget the name at the moment, but he looks like he's like 40 or something like that. He says he's been a doctor for 8 years, but he definitely looks a lot older than you would expect. And he has an affair with a girl in the main girl that's in the movie, which she seems like she's 20 or something like that, and she assures him that she's older than she actually looks, which that doesn't make it creepy at all. In fact, their relationship together is kind of creepy on how quick they get off on their relationship. He's clearly married, and I guess he's divorced, but they don't really express that well, and he seems to be hiding the fact of this affair from his ex-wife. And his motivation to go help her because of the events of the movie are kind of questionable, because he's not a cop, he's not a detective. So this girl right here, her dad is killed off early in the movie out of some weird conspiracy by Agent Smith looking men. And so instead of getting the police, they together decide to take the case upon themselves to figure out what exactly happened to her father. And it has to do with Halloween items. And to be frank and clear, that this movie is basically a product placement film for Halloween. It's selling Halloween items, Halloween masks, and that's the entire purpose of this movie. And so they leave their podunk town, I'm not sure where they're actually from, and they go to some place in Northern California where the company called Shamrock is from, which is the company that's making the mask of which her dad had at the beginning of the movie. This location is basically in the middle of nowhere. It's probably somewhere in California. It's probably in real life a small town, but it also makes you question on why a big company like that would be near such a small town instead of near a big city, but that's just my opinion. And so they go into some sleazy hotel, and they find that her father was in the hotel about a week before his murder. By the way, did I mention that her dad was killed by having his nose ripped off? Here, I'll show you right now. This has to be one of the weirdest deaths I've seen in a horror film. And there's a lot of deaths in this movie like this. In fact, I would argue and say that the death scenes in this movie are more gruesome than the last previous two Halloween movies. This guy literally gets his nose ripped up, implying that he had his skull like ripped up at the same time. And it surprised me when I saw this. And so we get to this creepy scene where the doctor and the girl are in a sleazy hotel. They're trying to find out what happened to her father again. And he implies that he could sleep somewhere else, but he's also at the same time implying that he wants to sleep in the same room as her. And she says, "Where do you want to sleep at?" And they just hit it off. Like, it's so quick how they hit off this relationship. And like I said, it is somewhat creepy, but you kind of get past it later in the film. So there are these like men in black. They look like Agent Smiths. I would say these are the precursor of Agent Smiths. And what they actually are, we'll get to it later, but they're so strong that they can rip people's heads open, people's mouths open, whatever. And this lady dies in the weirdest way possible that I can explain. There are these little thimbles or totems in this movie. These things right here, they have like a 3-leaf clover on the front of it, so I don't have a picture of it clearly, but they're all over the movie. And without question, that same lady dies, and these weird men in white coats come and take her. The doctor says, "I'm a doctor, let me take a look." And they don't both immediately just get in the car and go straight to the police, and they don't find this weird at all. I would find this extremely weird. So they go to the Silver Shamrock later in the movie, which is the company that makes these weird Halloween mask things. Throughout the entire movie, there's this corridor lady that's trying to examine the body of her dead father, trying to figure out how he died exactly or why he died, which there's going to be a big shocker later in the movie. And so there's this crazy uh, corporate tycoon who also I forget the name at the moment, but he's basically the villain of this movie, and he controls the Silver Shamrock or whatever it's called, and he controls these men in black, and not one single person finds this guy odd, especially with the things he says. He says some off the wall shit, but he's like so calm about it. And so both the main character and our female lead see the men in black or the men in gray, whatever. They decide to both leave because they look just like the guy that killed her father a couple of days before, which they didn't get the hint at all that these guys were around, and I would have gotten that hint as soon as I walked in that place. These gray men go and capture the girl, and our guy becomes like Dick Tracy slash he becomes our hero of the main movie, and he goes in without a gun or out of weapon, and he goes into Silver Shamrock even when the gray men are in there. Oh yeah, this is one of them. One of the men in black. I failed to show you an image, but this is one of them, and he does everything in his power to fight this guy, and he keeps saying, oh shit, because he doesn't seem to hurt him, only to realize there's some type of robot with some type of pumpkin juice coming out of their mouth, and I cannot for the life of me take this seriously, because it's such a cheap effect. You can completely tell that's a puppet, and I guess this is supposed to be pumpkin juice since it's a Halloween film or whatever. So our crazy tycoon and his men in black reveal the plan that they want to bring Halloween back to its sacrificial purpose, which is to, I guess, sacrifice people on Halloween by building this chip into the mask, and when a specific commercial plays. By the way, this commercial that he's watching has been playing throughout the whole film, and it's like the main theme of the story. But the idea is the person's supposed to wear the Halloween mask, and when they watch the commercial, they will die instantly along with their family. And so instead of killing our hero after they caught him, they decide to put the mask on and let him die watching the commercial as well, instead of just killing him off, because our villain basically plays the typical Austin Powers, James Bond type villain. Instead of just killing our hero, he's going to make them suffer, knowing that they may escape. Unsurprisingly, our hero does escape his chains, and he ends up going to save the girl and calls the police and all that. And then he uses the same thimbles that, I don't know what they're called, throughout the whole movie, and he pours it on the scientist, effectively killing the scientist, but failing to stop the commercial, which I don't know how he was planning to do that, but he didn't stop the commercial. So throughout the movie, these guys were building this giant rock that is supposed to resemble Stonehenge, because he mentions that Stonehenge was a sacrificial place, and he effectively sacrifices himself, and I guess, I don't know, he seems happy about it. To be honest, I'm not really sure what he was planning to do with this plan all along. Was he planning to die all along? Because when the commercial hits, suddenly this thing glows and he just evaporates, and it's never explained. Was that his plan all along? Because he just seems completely happy about this and calm. So let me get to our little plot twist, and I'm not really 100% sure this is a plot twist. It turns out our main girl was an android all along, and our villain is effective at making androids. That's where all the men in black were. But here's my question. Was she really an android all along? Or did they kill her and make her an android? That's something that's never really explained. Because as soon as he finds her at the end of the movie, when he finds her and saves her, she does act kind of weird versus how she was acting earlier. So my guess is, I highly doubt that she was an android all along. I think they actually caught the original girl, killed her, and made her an android. But it is implied in this particular scene that she was an android all along. And so our main hero finds a phone booth and he immediately calls his ex-wife or wife. I'm not sure, again, if she's divorced him or whatever. And she calls her to tell her kids to take off the masks, which they're from the Silver Shamrock people, before they watch the commercial, but for some reason the wife doesn't believe him, and the movie ends implying that the kids left the mask on while watching the commercial because the wife doesn't leave him, but it's never actually shown or said. It's just implied, and it's pretty much left to your own imagination. So, what do I think of this movie? I think it's not as bad as people say, for one. Two, it does have a kind of Bates Motel feel to it, and it does, in a way, have a Halloween trick or treat theme to it. It is a great anthology film, and I honestly think that this movie is underrated. It's just such a shame that it has the title Halloween 3. Because when this movie came out, it was expected to see Michael Myers, and you do see Michael Myers, but at a bar scene that's later in the movie. It's in this particular scene where he goes at a bar. It is also the same scene where he meets a girl. So, if I were to give this movie a scale of 1 to 10, I give it maybe about it's not the worst movie I've ever seen, but it's also definitely not a very great movie. So I give it about a 6. And like I said, this movie is in a way underrated. And if you like anthology films, if you like Tales of Halloween, if you like Trick or Treat, you'll probably at least somewhat enjoy this movie. I recommend that you watch this at least once because there are people that enjoy watching a lot of Halloween movies in October. You know, the 30-day Halloween challenge is where you watch a horror movie every day. I recommend that people watch this at least once, just throughout the month, just to get an idea. Because it is somewhat worth it to watch it. It is a Halloween themed film. Anyways, guys, that's my take of Season of the Witch. This is Matthew Scooby. You guys enjoy your lovely weekend. Peace out.